Welcome everyone. So there's still some people trickling in. So here's the program what we're going to cover today. We'll start with a quick brief introduction for myself about the center and what's the role of marketing and sales in circularity. This webinar is a partnership between us at Exeter, the Exeter Center for Circular Economy, and Clarasys. Loic is here representing Clarasys. We have an established relationship going back a few years now. We've been doing some work together, and you're going to learn some about that. And Loic is going to present a toolkit that we developed together that is used in one of our programs that we're also going to present. And then we also have some guest speakers, industry guest speakers, Harri, Lockett, and Louise Whitaker here from Selfridges and Virgin Auto Media, who are going to, well, in that particular part of the session is going to be more of a conversational part. We're going to have a discussion with them on how they're approaching marketing in the implementation of circularity in their own organizations. And we'll leave some time at the end for a Q&A, questions. These are the rules of the engagements. It's being recorded, so everyone is aware. You can use the Q&A box on Zoom to drop your questions. We'll collect those at the end and go through those. I'm sure there'll be some that were similar. We'll just filter those questions and put them to our panelists. There'll be some QR codes through the presentation for you guys to engage throughout. There'll be some live elements and some interactive elements, particularly on Loic's side of the presentation. So do have your mobile phones available. Yeah, feel free to use reactions, get involved, let us know throughout the webinar how you are seeing it and if you're enjoying it. So here's me with a Fiona hat there. Just a very quick introduction to the Exeter Center for Circular Economy, or ECCE as we call it internally. We were actually launched by Dame Ellen MacArthur herself back in 2018. She came to the Exeter campus and we had a nice ceremony launching this research center. We do quite a lot of work in quite a few different areas. You see a list here. We have been, although it was launched in 2018, we have been promoting the circular economy since 2010. We're really interdisciplinary. Coincidentally, we spent the first half of the afternoon in an ECCE meeting, our own internal meeting with colleagues from across the university, talking about their interest and their research and sharing something of what we do. We are fairly sector agnostic. We work across entire value chains. We don't work with particular specific industries, but we welcome partnerships with everyone and across all geographical contexts. And we are quite active in developing methodological tools and translating theory into practice, and that informs a lot of the work we do with companies, with organizations. And then we also have some global partnerships, including the one with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, but we've also became recently a founding member of the UN Center of Expertise in Circular Economy. So our mission overall is, we have the mission to empower the global transition to an inclusive circular economy through our transdisciplinary work and our collection of evidence, education, which we're going to talk about a bit today, and transformative partnerships. So I hope when Fiona sees the recording, I made her proud and I stayed on message. But we're going to see if we can still have a bit of Fiona later on to see if she can still introduce the center. So in this case, I'll jump briefly to my part of the presentation, where I'll just, as I mentioned in the program, introduce a quick overview of the role of marketing and circularity in sales. I mean, I know I'm convinced everyone attending in this webinar has already an interest in circular economy, so I suspect I'll be preaching to the converted here. But just to provide a very quick context on why I believe the need for circular economy has never been greater. You have this data here in front of you, which is a famous ecological footprint updated every year by the Global Ecological Footprint Network. If you're interested in knowing more about the methodology, it's easy to find online. But in essence, this is a metric of human demand on ecosystems. And we are in this situation at the moment that we need 1.7 Earths to cater for all the demand that humans pose on the planet. So we are clearly pushing against the limits of the planet, hence the need for a more circular approach to go about our business. Just to give you a few more examples to set the tone for the discussion later on, we know that the world uses approximately 100 billion metric tons of materials per year, and this is expected to actually increase even more by 150% by 2060. We know that our current process of extracting and processing materials account for more than half of our carbon emissions and 90% of global water stress, and this is just to name two factors. And all of this means that our global average material footprint per capita nowadays would need to reduce by 50% when we get to 2050. If we just add what we see on the news almost daily now, I mean, we just have to look at the news to realize how vulnerable our current linear economic models are to geopolitical changes and constraints. I mean, we are seeing a growth of international trade restrictions, either by policy or by conflict. We see nations increasingly using access to resources for geopolitical strategic advantage, like access to energy, minerals, fertilizers, and so on. And just this morning, I was reading a great article on the Financial Times titled "The Great Commodities Disruption Caused by the Current Closure of the Strait of Hormuz." And that goes way beyond oil alone, though oil tends to grab all the media attention. That closure of the strait is causing all sorts of supply chain disruptions, much beyond oil. Couple that with the fast demographic changes the world is experiencing, like the fast growth of global middle class across the world, which is a success story, but with that comes almost by definition more purchasing power and more consumerist class growing. So all of these are planetary pressures that becoming even more acute in the years ahead. And I rest my case on these two slides that we do need circular economy more than ever. However, global circularity has been more or less stuck for the past few years at roughly 7%. So something needs to change. And it is in this space that centers like ours, like ECCE and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation exist. They exist to incentivize and accelerate the transition to a circular economy. We have been working very successful with the EMF. When I say EMF, it's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation over the past few years, running a very successful circular economy masterclass. We've now going to have our 25th cohort. We had thousands of practitioners going through that program. And more recently, we started to offer deeper dives, more niche programs to complement the knowledge acquired on that one. One, for example, on supply chain management and procurement, and one on marketing and sales, which is what we covered today. Now, this diagram needs almost no introduction. I'm sure you're probably all very familiar with this diagram by EMF. It's probably the most popular and recognized visual representation of the key principles of a circular economy. I mean, it's a very effective and intuitive way to communicate the multiple processes we can consider to ensure a continuous flow of materials. One of its advantages is that it moves the conversation away from just recycling, which is important, but is only one of the many ways we can keep materials in circulation. And these multiple resource flows captured in the diagram allow us then to consider new business models to unlock new value creation opportunities. I mean, some examples are listed here on the left. Business models like product as a service or sharing platforms or product life extension. However, this is now starts to bring us to our discussion about marketing. All these business models also tend to be built more or less inside out. In other words, we understand very well how to design these processes and these loops. We are quite good at coming up with the technical feasibility of these models, but we can often overlook the very important customer dimension when we design these things. But the fact is that all these business models, these new business models, require also customers to develop new behaviors so they can contribute to the circulation of resources. I mean, they require customers to develop new relationships with producers and products, and they also require customers to take on new roles. For instance, they go from becoming just buyers to becoming stewards or custodians of value, and that fundamentally changes the way producers and consumers interact with each other. But on the other hand, we also know that many circular business models end up failing because customers are just not fulfilling these new roles and behaviors we require from them. We are working on assumptions that about behaviors that are necessarily not there. And I think too often we've fallen into the assumption that we build it and they will come, but did we really design these systems with the customer in mind? I mean, we might have a whole range of very good reasons for these models, still valid, like ecological reasons, resource savings, but was the customer really at the center of the way we design these models? There is a discipline out there, though, whose sole focus is the customer, understanding the customer, engaging, communicating with the customer, and that discipline is marketing. And as you can see by the textbook marketing definitions in here, I mean, marketing is the discipline responsible for identifying customer needs, shaping our products and services to meet those needs, and communicating value to encourage engagement, purchase, and very importantly, to encourage loyalty. When marketing focuses on attracting and retaining customers, just the fact that I'm emphasizing retaining customers means that marketing can and should have a very key role in helping circularity. This is recognized by EMF too. Here's an example of a very nice publication EMF did with Kantar just a couple of years ago, the marketing playbook for a circular economy. Great little manual that we started to embed in all of our programs. I do encourage you to have a look at it. And also at Exeter, we have been working with Clarasys for some time now, developing research and toolkits to better engage with customers in circularity. In fact, today's webinar is a continuation of this partnership work we've been doing with Clarasys. So just quickly going back to the importance of marketing, I want you to consider the following. In a linear system, like the one you see on the screen, the role of marketing and sales normally ends at the point of purchase. I mean, the function here of marketing is to help the customer select your product, hopefully purchase it, and that's pretty much where it stops. And in that case, success usually means pushing volume growth. Let's be honest, that's also the reason why marketing is often seen as part of the problem in sustainability. But if we move to a circular model, we start to talk instead about issues like utilization and value retention. A circular model of customer engagement increases customer touch points. It promotes an extended relationship with the customer. Hopefully, it leads to improvements in the overall customer experience. And if you pay attention to these buzzwords I've been using, touch points, relationship, customer experience, these are the prime working matter of marketing. In both models you have on the screen here, issues like customer insight, positioning, storytelling, experience design, they're both central to the success, but their scope can be very different. And one of these models here can unlock many more opportunities for customer engagement and brand differentiation. And it's not the model on the left necessarily. But it is also true that the circular model is more complex and requires different tools, an extended marketing toolkit, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So my point overall, as in this introduction, is that marketing and circularity can really have a symbiotic relationship where each provides strengths to the other. In marketing and sales teams, they should have training, if they're good, in training skills and knowledge to understand what the consumer wants or needs. They are or should be experts on demand generation, on influencing behaviors, and they are the ones in the company who are better placed to help develop those strong customer relationships that circularity depends on. Likewise, circularity offers the company an opportunity for brand differentiation, to build loyalty, to generate potentially new and ideally longer revenue streams, and if done well, can really become a tool to improve customer experience and enhance company's reputation. So there is tremendous potential in this synergy between both. But for that potential to be realized, we do need to equip marketeers and businesses with better tools to make the most of it. And this is what brings us now to our deep dive program on marketing and sales for circularity. Just to provide a very quick overview of what this program covers. Why did we develop it? Well, we're trying to move from essentially providing knowledge and awareness to support implementation and give practitioners, like the people attending this session, some practical tools for execution. The program is aimed at professionals working in marketing and sales, but ideally that already have some foundational understanding of circularity. And ideally have attended our general masterclass before, but if you haven't, it's no problem. If you can evidence some foundational knowledge of circularity, we can accept you. Also, if you happen to be in the room attending and you are an EMF network member, we do have special access to our courses. You might have access to discounted seats, so I suggest you get in contact with us or your EMF relationship manager in your company to find out the conditions or your entitlement to that access, that special access to our programs. I mean, on the screen, you see some of the examples of previous organizations that participated in our first cohort. We're now going to the second cohort, and the second cohort starts in a couple of weeks, and registrations are still open. This is our program. I'm not going to go into detail. The program takes you into a journey from identifying opportunities, market positioning, delivery, and measuring impact, But these 4 themes or these 4 weeks, they overlap pretty much with the 4-step framework that Loic will present next. So I'll leave it there because Loic will cover this in more detail. It's an online interactive program. There we have weekly guest speakers. We have weekly activities for people to do. The program is based on group work too. You'll be put together with a team of peers from other organizations working on challenges we give you every week, and there's a final pitch at the end. If this sounds interesting to you, there's the QR code there, but we're going to repeat that also at the end, and I believe Sarah is also going to put those links in the chat box. But yeah, so sorry that I went a bit quickly through this, but I just wanted to give you a general setting and context before now I pass over to Loic, who's going to present that toolkit that we developed together and that we use to deliver the program. And you also have other ways to access the toolkit that Loic will explain. So Loic, I'll be going to stop sharing my screen and I'll pass the baton to you.
Thanks, Fernando. That's a really, really nice introduction there. Appreciate all of the emphasis you've put on the importance of customer experience and engaging customers. So thanks for that, and hello to everyone. I'll just do a very quick, brief intro and context so we can get straight into looking at the toolkit together. So my name is Loic Fouest. I am the Circular Economy Practice Lead at Clarasys. Clarasys is a employee-owned consultancy that focuses really on 2 key areas: helping organizations improve their customer lifecycle management, hence the repeat focus here on customer, and helping organizations transition to be more purpose-led and making sure that they're aligning profit with ambitions and roadmap to have a positive impact on people and planet. As Fernando said, we've been working together with Exeter for a long time now. I had the pleasure of kicking off the partnership with the team about 5 years ago when we got together to try and help solve one of the biggest challenges for the circular economy, driving customer engagement. And still to this date, organizations that have pilots or initial circular business models out there continue to find it difficult to engage customers in a repeat way to scale their business models. So this first piece of work we delivered with Exeter, which Fernando had up on the screen, we're really focused on creating an experience design toolkit where we partnered with a number of large business organizations to understand all of the challenges that they were facing and come up with a set of tools and techniques, which Fernando touched on really nicely, that help move the thinking from what we call inside out, internal sustainability and circular initiatives that have goals of, limiting waste and achieving other internal results, but that often lack sufficient focus on the customer from inception. That means ultimately they fail to appeal to a wide enough range of customers, and they don't get enough engagement, and they don't get the ROI, they don't scale. So after delivering that first piece of work, and I'll fast forward all the way to today, we've kept the focus on customer experience. But the toolkit we'll be talking through today around marketing and sales moves the conversation a bit forward. It is really there to help really move from sustainability being the main focus of the circular economy team and ambitions into really making it a conversation about business results, whether that's driving business resilience, improving customer lifetime value, or generating new sources of revenue. That's where this Circular Advantage Toolkit comes in. This toolkit, similar to the first one, is built based on lessons learned working with organizations that have been successful in getting these circular efforts off the ground. So we're going to be walking through a few of those, and as Fernando said, using a couple of polls to keep this as engaging as possible, and so you guys get a bit of data to see what everyone else is thinking about, where they're struggling with, or where they're at on their journey. So I'll kick us off to quickly help set the scene. I'll use this visual. Some people might have come across similar concepts. So this is the innovation sweet spot. When we talk about innovation sweet spot, it actually summarizes really nicely the balance that organizations need to find when creating circular business models and going to market with circular products and services. And organizations that have been successful in going to market in circularity have been the ones closest to the center here of the 4 circles. They tend to do the right thing and start by focusing on customer desirability. And that really means making sure that your circular product and service solves a customer problem, isn't just a more sustainable solution to the one that's out there. It's actually a differentiated experience in itself. And then that allows the business to focus on the commercial viability, the technical and operational feasibility, and of course, to focus on the circular outcomes, achieve positive results for people and planet. So we tried to summarize here down to three win themes that effectively we've picked up by working with a broad set of organizations that are seeing good results when it comes to their circular progress. And these three ones are repeated across all organizations. We're going to continue using this word a lot, but customer centricity, first and foremost. And like I just mentioned, that's all about creating a differentiated experience for your customers through your circular products and services. The second one is very much focusing on the commercial value and thinking about customer acquisition, new sources of revenue, but also fundamentally on how this is going to help you deepen your relationships with your existing customers in order to better serve them through more differentiated products and services that keep them coming back as repeat customers. And the third one we find has been often a focus kick down the line where organizations, rightly enough, are trying to get pilots out there and get some data. But it means that organizations haven't thought through the types of capability evolution required, the new types of processes, skills, and technology that you need to put in place and invest in order for your circular results to be successful. So these are the main three win themes that we will look at how they come through within the tools. But just to pause a little bit there and get a bit of sense of where people are at their journey, if I can just invite everyone to grab their phone and to scan the QR code on the screen. We've got one or two poll questions that we were going to ask and invite everyone to respond to. So I'll open up Access and it should give you a couple of seconds, really. I'll do the same on my side. Good to always check the links are still working. To come and pick one of the 5 responses here, trying to understand how confident you feel today in your marketing and sales capabilities, in creating that customer demand, right? In creating desirability for your products and circular services. So I'll give a couple more seconds there before showing the results as people are submitting. So that should come through on your phones as well. So if we look at the results from the first poll here, we can see that generally low effectiveness to date. And I'm not surprised because this is a challenge that a lot of organizations are facing and recognize that we need more investment into our marketing and sales capabilities. It's shifted a little bit there into 44-33 in the middle. Okay, that's the first poll. We've got one more poll here to go through on the next slide. So should get up on screen and I will also open this poll. So again, it should be the same link. QR code is still available there. Submit this next result. So the next poll is all around, let's think further ahead and understand how confident people are in scaling their business models thanks to their marketing and sales capabilities so that we really have a long-term growth vision of where we're trying to get to. So I can see most of the results are starting to come in. I'll put them up on the screen. And again, unsurprisingly, low confidence to date. This is new territory for a lot of organizations. So the toolkit that we're going to be quickly chatting through effectively aims at giving new solutions to answer those 2 questions. The answer will depend on your organization context, your customer relations you're trying to create, and your set of products and services. But the logic of how to get there has been built into the toolkit itself and into the masterclass. So I'll bring this visual up on the screen, which hopefully gives that very same similar overview to the one Fernando was talking about for the masterclass. So the toolkit is made up of 4-step framework that is really there to challenge organizations' thinking when it comes to how they're rolling out their circular business models and embrace those 3 win themes: customer centricity, commercial value, and capability evolution. Okay. And effectively, it's a 4-step guide from the start of your journey, identifying your circular opportunity, helping you position it for circular advantage. And that means, really understand how you differentiate that circular proposition compared to the linear ones that exist in the market. Moving into number 3, not just coordinating the mix of marketing and sales initiatives, but also reflecting on the investments required to move those capabilities forward in order to get better results. And then the fourth section of the toolkit and the masterclass are all about how do you measure the impact and progress you're making? And importantly, how do you reinforce the business case so that you can grow your circular results and expand them to new areas of your portfolio? So this is the four-step framework. On the next slide, you'll just get a quick sense of how it breaks down into each of the tools. So there's roughly 3 to 5 tools for each section that help you achieve those 4 outcomes: identifying your circular opportunity, positioning yourself, going to market, and measuring and scaling your results. So for the rest of the time, we'll take 10 minutes now to just go into 1 or 2 tools to try and bring them to life. And again, there'll be 1 or 2 more polls to get people involved. So we'll go on to the first tool. And this is from section 1, identifying your circular opportunity. It's a circular journey mapping tool. And as someone that comes from the world of customer experience transformation, I'm a bit biased, and I think this might be my favorite tool in the toolkit. And before I jump in and talk through some of the components in a walkthrough example, we're going to do the same activity of just answering a quick poll question down on the left. So I'm going to ask everyone if we can scan that QR code again. You should have the same link open. And I'm keen to understand, where are you seeing today the most friction when you're trying to engage customers in your circular products and services? Which stage of the journey is getting the most friction across awareness, evaluation, acquisition, the use and reuse phase, services support, and return and renew? So I'm seeing some of the results trickle in. I'll let a few more people submit that before we put them up on the slide. Right, let's see where we get to. Show results. Okay, we've got a bit of a spread for the results coming in. So it seems like about a third find the biggest friction point to be around awareness, finding the right new customer segment and making sure that they understand the benefits of the circular proposition, and around the acquisition and onboarding phase. So making sure they're set up for success in that new value proposition. So this tool will hopefully help those organizations really think a little bit differently around the types of interventions required. A bit of context for the tool before we jump in. So the reasoning behind it was that we see that a lot of organizations today go to market, and the propositions are very much focused around a niche set of customers. We can call them your eco warriors, that are going to put up with any friction to get access to a more sustainable alternative. The focus of this tool is to actually help reflect across each stage of your customer journey and identify ways to remove that friction through marketing and sales, and to increase the trust from that customer in order to get them to buy in to your customer journey that's circular. So if I now look back at the template and just talk through a very high level example, we're going to talk about a premium fashion repair and care journey. And the way this template reads is quite straightforward. Along the top, you've got the journey phases from awareness all the way to renewal. The first line captures your typical linear actions: browsing for something new that's in trend in season, purchasing it as a one-off, probably not using it much. There's some shocking data around how little use per garment we have typically in our wardrobes. And then finally throwing it in the bin. The circular journey, you can see, feels and looks quite different. We're engaging people around product durability and repairability. We're offering new types of services like a lifetime care subscription. We're using new types of technology like digital product passports to engage customers, offering new services like repair services. And finally, end of life, we're finding the best next transition for that product and material. For me, where this tool becomes really interesting, and it was hard to show in this little space, but if you look at the 2 curves in the middle, what we've found very powerful is when organizations compare the experience and the effort of their linear journeys with the circular ones that they're trying to put forward. And we realize that the value doesn't always add up. We haven't created enough of a differentiated and frictionless experience that's going to engage customers at scale. And this tool allows you to identify where are those biggest friction points, where can you create more value, and how do you get that customer buy-in. That was one of the tools. I'm going to quickly touch through a second one before we can look to wrap up and engage our panelists who have done a lot of work to get their organizations in a place where they are successfully speaking to customers in their language. So one last poll, I promise, from our side. I'll let people get that one up on the screen as well. So this next template comes from section 2 and is about taking a system change approach to scaling your circular offerings. So I'll open up the voting as well. You basically get a chance to pick here, where do you think there's the most effort for your organization when it comes to activating different parts of your system? Is it customer engagement? Is it enablers and partners? Or is it new actors, perhaps, for a lot of organizations in influencers and validators that will help them create the right value proposition for their customers? So I can see the results are trickling in there. Thanks for everyone taking part in the polls. And I'll just bring them up again on the screen. Unsurprisingly, end users always comes up as the most challenging group to engage. So the point of this canvas is to actually think about, how do we use enablers and partners, influencers and validators to improve the way we engage end users. So the logic behind this tool, again, just broken down here with the fact that circularity is a system challenge. We know this. Brands are able to make progress themselves, but without using the different system actors and their leverage points in the systems, it becomes a very challenging transformation and a risky one and an expensive one. So if we look at this canvas, and I just quickly walk through the 3 rows, what it helps articulate is, of course, how are we engaging the end users? And we're talking here in a forever fashion subscription, the opportunity to migrate our existing customers into this proposition, but also to acquire a new set of customers. But what I find more interesting in this canvas is spending time thinking about the enablers and the partners. What kind of reverse logistic partners do we need to make this a good experience? What kind of certification and certified repair services are going to allow us to get enough trust from the customers that it's a worthwhile service using? And by focusing more time on mapping your system actors, understanding where they fit in your strategic targets, whether you're deepening relationships, scaling it, or in this case, migrating and acquiring customers, and really think about the positioning statement that's going to help those organizations get on board with your mission and be part of that value proposition. And again, massive opportunity to de-risk the investments and to speeden up how quickly you can offer a good experience to your customers. So those are just 2 examples of tools that hopefully bring to life the different type of thinking that they allow organizations to play with. Summarized here very quickly are a couple of key takeaways that will just repeat a lot of the same messages. So reframe the conversation, move from sustainability into business resilience, business growth, customer lifetime value. Focus on the experience you're providing customers and use frameworks. Frameworks will make it easier for you to close gaps like the say-do gap and better go to market. For those that are interested in getting more information about the toolkit, and I think we'll post again the link in the chat. There's a contact us page in there where you can also reach out if you wanted to go through any of those in more detail, and a number of coaching options for you to select from. So I'll leave up the QR code there for a second. But this is probably a good chance for me to stop speaking for a little bit and to invite our brilliant guest speakers today that have been leading the way in bringing circular economy forward for their organizations. So I'll take this chance to welcome onto the screen with me Harri and Louise. And rather than butchering your introductions, I'd love to just get you guys to first start and introduce yourselves, your roles, and a bit of background so we know who we have on the call with us. I might just pass to Harri first to get us started.
Thanks so much, Loic, and hi, thanks for everyone for joining today. It's been great so far. So I'm Harri Lockett. I'm Circular Manager for Selfridges, and more specifically internally Reselfridges, which is our circular programs. It really does look after a range from repair to pre-loved to refill and across a few different categories. I've been in the role now for 6 months and come from a more traditional sustainability background, always focused on that intersection with the customer, and how we can get the most value out of sustainability for the business, always being protective of greenwash and any other aspects we need to consider.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Harry. Thanks for joining. And Louise, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Loic. And again, yeah, thank you for the invitation. Yes, I'm the Circular Economy Manager at Virgin Media O2. I sit in the central sustainability team. There's about 9 of us there. And I guess, yeah, a lot of my role is really focused on how we bring circularity into every aspect of our business. We're pretty large and fairly complex. But I guess probably the most customer-facing items or the things people relate to is really around our customer premise equipment, CPE, basically your set-top boxes and everything you use to get Virgin TV at home, and a lot of work on our handsets and devices, mobiles. So yeah, I guess they're the most customer-facing.
That's fantastic. So again, 2 very different examples, but both of you already talking about the focus on customers. Louise, we'll stick with you to just get a first sense from your experience of, the work that you've been driving for a number of years now continues to scale. Curious to hear from you what you thought was the inflection point that you guys kind of went through that meant you were just trying to get some pilots out there and test what this would look like, to now really feeling that you can continue to scale and have a clear roadmap to take things forward.
Yeah, it's a good question and probably a complex one. And I think I joined Virgin Media O2 2 years ago. And when I joined, circular economy was already kind of a pillar in our overarching sustainability strategy. So we had an ambition to help customers make 10 million circular actions. So that drove quite a lot of the solutions that enabled customers to do that. And I think that gave us a really strong starting point. However, when I joined, it was also obvious that actually there were certain teams that really believed in circularity and were already running with it. So our supply chain team are probably some of our biggest advocates and allies across the business, who really championing this kind of reuse mentality and have a lot of systems inbuilt that do that. So I think from a kind of hardware ecosystem perspective, there was a huge amount of work being done to kind of capitalize on that opportunity from a kind of a revenue and a margin and an operational aspect. I think the biggest opportunity really is for us to kind of take that internal work and make it more customer focused. And exactly to the points you've been making on the call, how do we integrate some of these behaviors into the customer journey and normalize it? I think in terms of our opportunity, I think we're in quite a lucky position in that the market, we're in a growing market. Like the market for refurbished handsets and devices is in growth. It's forecast to grow about 4% year on year. So it's less about kind of convincing customers. I think there is a strong cohort of customers who are already buying this, and it's more actually how do we get our offer right and our experience right to capitalize on that. And we're seeing growth in those areas where we do offer, for example, refurbished, more circular products already. So yeah, it's we're in a privileged position that the market's already moving.
Yeah, that's a very exciting opportunity. But like you said, it was grounded from the start in some of these behavioral changes that you guys focused in on to get such a large set of customers involved and engaged, which is very difficult to drive. Harri, I'll go back to you. You mentioned, 6 months within this role and obviously driving circular economy more broadly for a while. Be interesting to get your reflections 6 months into the role as to what you think has been such the strongest elements of the Selfridges or Reselfridges approach that has allowed the group to really scale its offering a lot over the last few years.
Definitely, I'd say looking at the data across the 5 years that Reselfridges has been in place, it is very clear that patience is part of the game here. When the business bought into a lot of these initiatives 5 years ago, there wasn't a huge amount of sales or revenue behind them, and it has taken that time for everything to build. But the good news is the building is happening now very quickly, and sort of in its 5th year, we've recently seen 29% sales growth last year versus the year before. And actually, I think what's really helped us move internally is having that sort of hero product as such, which is our pre-loved pillar. So out of about 17.6 mil that was driven through the circular sales for the business last year, a huge chunk of that, about 70%, is coming from pre-loved products, and that's mainly in the accessories space. That also saw a growth in itself of 47% last year. So it's just really at this point in the journey being able to find those real growth opportunities, and that's helping us obviously advocate for more attention internally. And then I think another big inflection point was in 2024, the business dedicated permanent destinations to Reselfridges in each of the stores. I think the really important point here is that it's starting to integrate that shopping experience of circular into the linear economy version that we've already got in store. So it's making it a very intuitive, very desirable shopping experience. And it's actually not asking the customer to change their behavior too much whilst being able to participate in the circular economy. And I think that's done us wonders.
Yeah, you've absolutely nailed it there. I think that focus on finding ways where it doesn't sit in its own little corner of the websites, and it's really, hard to find quite literally, but it becomes integrated into the shopping experience. Yeah, that's fantastic. And a word of encouragement around the patience that doesn't happen on day one, for those folks that are a bit earlier in the journey. I'll stick with you, Harry. I'm a big fan of the way the Reselfridges campaign is shaped, the tone of voice, and the way that you guys have positioned it. It's one of the best examples I've seen, and you guys keep building on that success. Would love for you to share a little bit about the insights of what that feels and looks like to find the right way to shape your marketing and kind of sales positioning in a way that's going to connect with your customer base.
Absolutely. I mean, Loic, we're so lucky at Selfridges. We have a creative powerhouse across the business, and we're very used to that branding, marketing, artists in every window space. So we were lucky to be able to tap into that creative in the first place. And as you say, they've designed a really playful, fun, really good identity for Reselfridges. I think that identity has served us so well, particularly as we say in those in-store spaces. We look and feel like a brand. We sit next to a Burberry or a Gucci, and we are quite identifiable, even though we're selling a mix of brands once you go past the Reselfridges banner. So I think that's been a real big success. Out of curiosity, what we're starting to understand about the way we've branded and engaged is that we've really been able to touch maybe as well. I'll just quickly step back. Our customer insights have shown us we've got 3 types of customers in Selfridges around this, and we've got an unconverted customer who is not shopping on a sustainability basis, a curious majority who would like to, but only if it's easy, and then we've got that informed insider who's really on the hunt for it. What we found is the branding we've got in place and the playful tone is fantastic to hit all 3. But actually probably weakest with the informed insider. So we've probably gone a little bit light on the actual benefits of this being a circular, sustainable transaction. So we've got a little bit more work and tweaking to do within our branding to try elevate the sustainability and the green messaging within it as well.
That's great. Yeah, it's a fantastic campaign for those that haven't seen it. And the way you describe it there, just focusing on the personas and the different behaviors they have, you can already hear the thinking come through around how much attention was paid to what's going to resonate with those customers. Louise, I'll come back to you. You mentioned one of those customer goals, 10 million customer actions. You're a big business. The scale at which you're starting to really, reach customers and people through your circular actions is immense. And you mentioned, there's the behavioral elements and the behavioral nudge there. That's not easy to do. So would love to hear as well some reflections from you on what did you find that allowed you guys to achieve that, to scale the amount of people that you were able to engage in your circular efforts.
Yeah, I think for us, it's similar actually. The role of kind of branding or sub-branding, I think, has a really significant part to play in attracting people to the offer. And I think for many people, like purchasing a device or sorting out your broadband, we're almost seen as a utility. It's not kind of necessarily always a fun purchase for everyone. It can sometimes be a bit of a distress purchase. And I guess historically, that's where we saw our like new sales. We kind of saw a lot more people buying them to replace a lost phone. We see a big spike when students go to university, for example, and need to replace a lost phone. So, I guess it's moving it from that distress purchase where it's kind of, the driver there presumably is you want it quickly and, it needs to be cheaper, to actually that preferred choice. And, when we've done research that looks at the barriers to what's stopping people purchasing and engaging, so much of it is around fears, around data security and battery health. Because, the people feel that those issues aren't there when you purchase a new phone. So our Like New proposition, which is our refurbished phone proposition, puts those concerns front and center. So it's a sub brand. It's kind of like new devices, and we talked head on about the battery health, the warranty, the same benefits as new, and so it's really kind of trying to alleviate those challenges and really presenting it as a win-win. And again, in quite a fun and opportunistic way. I think, sometimes sustainability can be seen as, it's very costly, or it can be a bit of a drain. But I think what's so brilliant about the circular economy is it really is a win-win. Like, it enables our customers to save money, access what they need quickly, and feel good about their purchase. So yeah, I guess that's our approach. And not overly complicating it, calling it like new. I mean, that's fundamentally what it is. And likewise with O2 Recycle, trading in a device, which the UK is really bad at trading compared to other countries. Again, like, trade it in, get some money. And we sort of target that activity around Christmas time with messaging around actually, who doesn't want a bit more cash around Christmas? And likewise in the new year when the credit card bills hit, well, trade in the devices that are sitting there doing nothing at home. So yeah, it's really trying to position it as a positive benefit.
Yeah, again, two completely different industries, products, but somehow they're taking the same approach and focusing on some of those principles. You were just rattling through there. Your proposition directly solves customer problems, and you understand
Absolutely.
where they have concerns, and that connection is so important. I want to make sure we take one or two questions from the audience, but I'll ask you guys a final question. A lot of the toolkit and the course is about enabling marketing and sales to be a real partner to help drive circular economy results. And both of you guys have mentioned there how you've kind of partnered a bit with them. So I wanted to just give you guys a final chance to share any insight of what's helped you work closer with those teams or with other teams in the organization that have been important to get that alignment so that you can, get the results that you wanted from your circular program. Maybe Louise, I'll stay with you and we can finish with Harri.
Okay, thanks. I think, it's predictable. You hear it in every kind of sustainability circle. And Harri, I'm sure you'll agree, like, you've got to speak the language, and I think that's what this toolkit is so good at. It is about customer lifetime value. It is about building relationships. It is about building trust. And so much of that can be achieved from the circular economy. At the end of the day, we're an organization that sells kind of hardware that layers on, services on top of that. So actually, does it matter to us whether it's new or a second life hardware? Because actually the value that we're giving to our customers is everything that we provide kind of wrap around to that. So I think, certainly speaking the language of the commercial team, I think presenting it very much as an opportunity. I think, we took a deck to our senior commercial team called kind of lighting the spark for reuse. And it's really, like, this is a real, it's such an opportunity. Look at how we're growing. And yes, organizations have a lot of priorities, but it becomes a bit of a competitive game. It's like, well, look, let's present the wins. And I think certainly in our situation, the geopolitics around critical materials, blockages we've seen in terms of moving electronics around the world in the last few years, they all just layer onto this argument really beautifully to kind of convey, well, less about why should we, but almost what happens if we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Harri, I could see you nodding a lot there.
I just completely agree. It's about talking the language. It's also about connecting that language with the right audience for us. We've got such a diverse set of stakeholders. I'm finding the retail teams and the shop floor teams, who are the ones there having the conversations with the customers, are so important to conversion. So there is a lot of FaceTime we do with them, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning. We try to get the stores to share with each other what's working, what's not, and really just taking that messaging and keeping it really simple and consistent so that they can relay with whoever they're having a conversation with in store. So that's a huge part of the job for us. I think the other side for me is just getting really critical on the messages that we want to send up to leadership and being super clear with the call to actions as well. So we don't get all the time for the exec, there's a lot of competing priorities. We're making good business and good revenue, so we do get their attention, but it's about being very strategic with what we do with that attention, and what we want from them to trickle down throughout the business, as a leadership message as well.
Absolutely. Some fantastic tips and advice there. Thanks both for sharing openly. I'll probably check in with Sarah and Fernando to see if we've got time for one audience question, maybe where you've seen the most themes that we can, get their expert opinions on, and then we'll take the rest of the questions and include them in the follow-up notes, because time flies when we're having fun, and we don't have too much time left. Fernando, any big theme that's coming through?
Sure, there was a question before, which I can clarify, and you clarify, which was about the toolkit. The question if it was focused mostly on a B2C or a B2B context, if it's applicable for both.
Yeah.
I know from experience of running the toolkit in the previous cohort that the participants use it in both ways. But just from the point of view of the developer of the toolkit, when you develop it, what kind of uses did you have in mind? Was it?
No, you're spot on. The principles apply to both types of customers, whether it's business customers or end consumers. It's about understanding the value exchange that your circular proposition is going to offer for them. And we've seen on the last tool that it's about engaging the entire ecosystem. I think Louise was talking a little bit about the supply chain as well. So it extends to not just thinking about how you engage either end consumers or business customers, but fundamentally thinks about all of the actors that are going to help that circular value proposition go to market. So very much both of them.
Okay. Now maybe a question for our panelists. This is one that also came up frequently during the last cohort of the course. The participants in the course have to do this final mock final pitch for their own internal organization to make the case to drive new circular initiatives in there. And one of the things they asked them to do, we provide some help and some resources for that, is to think about what metrics they use to make the case, because as we talked, the traditional metrics that your businesses are designed to sometimes apply, sometimes not really. And I'm just wondering, moving this conversation to the metrics and demonstrating impact, how have you approached it to try to make the case internally? What kinds of metrics were you using to make that case?
Happy to start here. We're again very lucky. We have sales and revenue figures that get reported each month. So it's very easy for us to then take that information and forecast what we think we will be able to drive in sales if we invest X amount into a certain initiative. So that is the primary one for us. But I'd also say we are getting a bit more creative, particularly as a retailer. We have a Selfridges Unlocked program, which is all about loyalty and rewarding that customer with perks along the way. We get incredible amount of insights from that customer when they tap at the till point to tell us that they're that unlocked customer. So we can see whether they're in our VIP segment, how much they spend each year, what they spent in store that day, alongside maybe taking the action to recycle in the beauty hall. So we're able to really, by connecting into that loyalty program, open up a world of KPIs, and we are working to do that more and more to gain those insights.
That's great.
I think, yeah, we're similar. Certainly, revenue and margin, I think, is quite an important consideration when we talk about kind of, resale or reuse. The other one I'd add is kind of NPS. So, how do customers feel about your brand after they've used this kind of new service? And I think, again, that's such an opportunity to really show the benefits of more sort of circular actions and their impact on how customers feel in the longer term.
Thank you. Yeah, that does resonate with what people are exploring. It does open the possibilities to consider a much wider range of intelligence, let's call it, about consumers. And that's probably the trick that we sometimes have been missing, that not looking at this as an opportunity to collect more intelligence about our consumers. We do have one question in the chat this one also comes up frequently. One thing is branded value props, but can the toolkit be used for fast-moving consumer goods, which are by nature, much more challenging? Loic, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think we can close on that, because I think it's an interesting one that highlights. We had two speakers here coming from completely different industries, and the way that the approach is similar, but it looks very different. And of course, in FMCG, the type of circular opportunities fundamentally will feel different to what you might have in other types of industries. The idea of trying to find value for customers through a business model that creates a more sustainable outcome as well as business results is still valid. it will look and feel completely different. But the tools and the thinking there is just to take a step back and reflect on what does that circular opportunity look like, but starting with the customer problem statements. So in FMCG, as every industry, a valid place to explore that.
Do you think we have time? The question would take me 5 seconds to do. I wouldn't guarantee this the time will take to answer. This one is specifically for Harri that came in the chat box. I don't know if you see that, Harri. What sustainability check? Can you see it?
Yeah.
Take
it's a great question. I'm fortunate enough to have a responsible sourcing team who look after onboarding any supplier within the whole business. So they would do the due diligence around, your modern slavery checks and your other pieces that come under that responsible sourcing piece. I suppose what probably is unique for our team as Circular that we have to do a lot of due diligence on with our suppliers is more around that authentication piece and, verifying where those goods come from. There's different ways to approach it for different products. For example, the watch space is very established in understanding, how to authenticate via brands. And then also there's something called the watch register. If anyone's watch is ever stolen or high value watch, it's logged on this watch register. You can keep track of everything. So there are certain additional checks and balances we do in the pre-loved space to make sure what we're bringing in is all as above board and authentic and genuine for our customers as possible.
Thank you so much. So that takes us to the end. You have an excellent with exclamation mark in there. So that's it. Your answer was appreciated. Thank you, everyone. My apologies went over for a minute, but we also started a couple of minutes later. So thank you so much for Harri, for Louise, Loic, for the presentation. I'm probably just going to put on the screen the final slide with those QR codes for the toolkit and for the course in case anyone wants to stay over for a couple of minutes to. If you missed those links, you can still take a snapshot of those. But let's end the presentation bit here. Thanks again to our speakers. Thanks for all the participants, people who attended, and to get in touch with us if you're interested in any of these resources we've been talking about. Bye, everyone, and I'll just share in my screen that slide I was mentioning with the QR codes.
It's awesome. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you very much.